and thought, well, this may not be exactly the right title for this, but it is part 2 of, and we started in Daniel 11, so I'm going to stick with it, because we're going to be spending more time in Matthew than we are in Daniel tonight, for sure. So, as we get started, last week we really looked at past fulfilled prophecies. Now, for Daniel, they were future. For us, they were past. And so we went through kind of maybe a daunting task of trying to put names with all of the characters in Daniel chapter 11. Hopefully it didn't confuse you too much. But, you know, the real thing to learn from that is that very detailed prophecy in Daniel 11 was fulfilled to the letter, which God always does. The mark of a prophet of always is that the prophecy has to be fulfilled to 100%. And so there's no question that Daniel, this prophecy was fulfilled to that degree. So if the past prophecies were fulfilled, then we can be certain that future prophecies, the prophecies he made concerning the future, will also be fulfilled. So we also took a moment and looked at unfulfilled prophecies, and we just listed them, and I'll go ahead and list those again. The first unfulfilled prophecy that we have in Daniel is the resurrection of the Roman Empire, or the revival of the Roman Empire. Daniel chapter 2, verse 33, verses 42 and 43, and then chapter 7, verses 7 through 8. And this is an interesting one. Exactly what is that going to look like? What is this revived Roman Empire going to be? And exactly when will that happen? Will that happen actually even maybe prior to the rapture? Will we see the beginning of that really begin to take place? And as we look at things happening in Europe, and the government of France tumbled this last week, I don't know that would have anything to do with it, but folks, I think it's just worth our attention that we continue to watch to see what's going on. But that is a prophecy that has not yet been fulfilled. The next is the tribulation itself, which Daniel prophesies in chapter 9, verse 27, and then in chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Again, that is future, not yet fulfilled. We are not, even though things are tough today, in a lot of ways, we have not seen the tribulation yet. The third unfulfilled prophecy is the reign of Antichrist. And you can see all the verses there. Daniel goes into a lot of detail concerning Antichrist. And of course, we have the type of the, who is Antiochus Epiphanes IV, or the Antiochus IV Epiphanes, that's how it goes. And he is the picture of the forerunner of the Antichrist. And Jesus refers to him in Matthew chapter 24, which we'll see here in just a little while. But the reign of Antichrist, and folks, we're not going to see that until the tribulation begins. So if anybody says he's the Antichrist, or this guy's the Antichrist, and so forth and so on, no. You know, nobody's going to know who that is up until the point. Ooh, I don't know what I did there, but it wasn't good. Pretty picture, but...
Gary, while you're looking at that, have you been following at all about Peter, I don't know how you say his last name, Thiel? He's
who? Who?
Peter Thiel.
Thiel?
I'm not sure how you
No, I haven't. I guess that, no.
PayPal and Planeteer co-founder. He's also gay, and he is doing 4 private sold-out lectures on the Antichrist.
Oh, he is.
Have you all heard anything about that?
No. And you say he's gay?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
They're sold out. I don't know. He's talking about the coming totalitarian system in I guess about Armageddon.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's.
But I don't know that he's a believer.
He doesn't tell you if he's for or against it.
This article just says he believes the biblical concepts like the Antichrist and Armageddon stem from the potential catastrophic technologies that could lead to a totalitarian one world government. So
Interesting.
he's coming not from a scriptural viewpoint, it sounds like, but from technologically.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you spell his last name? Maybe Thiel? Uh-huh.
All right. Anita, did you write that down for me? Because I want to look that up. So that's fascinating. So not surprising, though. But it is surprising the guy's gay. So it'll be interesting to find out exactly what his take would be on that. All right. So found it. Back to the Antichrist. So the Antichrist is future. That's the thing we need to realize. He is future. He is going to be. He will be reigning, and that's a good term, during the tribulation, not prior to. In fact, if anything, the rapture of the church will be probably the key catalyst that will bring him or enable him to come into power, right? And then, of course, the final unfulfilled prophecy is the Christ eternal kingdom, which is the Messianic kingdom. And that's where all of this is leading. So, the Antichrist, the coming kingdom, folks, that's all future. So we've looked at the past and seen those fulfilled prophecies. We've been looking into the future to look at the Antichrist and so forth. But I felt it might be a good thing for us to spend a little time in the present. Where are we right now? Where are we in the whole scheme of things? And how can we know that this is where we are for sure? And how can we know that we are getting closer to the rapture? We've seen so many things happen, and we've all of a sudden all of us kind of looked up when Hamas did what they did on October 7th. Many of us thought, hey, the rapture's going to happen any time. When we see other things happening around the world, we think, is the rapture imminent? And so I think we're finding more and more that things are happening that are making us more conscious of the fact that things are close. But how can we really be sure? And I think that's where we need to spend our time. Plus, we need to spend our time kind of exactly where we are and how we can prepare for what's coming. All right, so that's kind of where we are. All right, so here's a timeline. We've seen our timeline before. Of course, this is beginning with the cross. So, and then Pentecost is actually the beginning of the church age. Now, remember, we are still all living in the times of the Gentiles. Right? That started with the Babylonian captivity of Judah. So, but don't confuse the age of the Gentiles with the church age. Totally different. The church age is from Pentecost to the rapture. All right? And whatever that is, is what will end the church age. When we get into our study of Revelation, and we study the seven churches, we'll really be talking a lot about the history of the church age. Okay? So, question is, well, we know we're in the church age. So, kind of where are we between Pentecost and the rapture? How close are we getting to the rapture? And how can we know we're close?
When we start going up.
Pardon?
When we start going up.
When we start going up. There you go. We're not close. We're there at that point.
I think when we start seeing the end of the church of Laodicea,
Okay.
because that's theoretically the last church.
Okay,
of
good.
The church age.
Good.
And we are seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
False prophets, false
Right.
teachers,
Right.
corrupting the scriptures.
Yes.
All of those things.
Yes. Okay. Steve?
Most everything we've seen forever.
Uh-huh.
Wars and rumors of wars.
Right,
earthquakes,
right,
all
uh-huh.
of that stuff. But the rapture is the very next thing on the prophetic timeline.
Right.
And there's nothing else that needs to be fulfilled before that occurs.
Okay. And I agree with you 100%. But I want to give you some information that I think will help you understand that we are truly in the end of the last days. because Jesus really addresses this in Matthew chapter 24. All right, so the question is, where are we, as we've just mentioned, in the timeline? And then, after we figured that out, how do we prepare for what lies ahead? So that's where we're headed. So, Matthew 23 through 25. Actually, Matthew 24 is the Olivet Discourse, but I've labeled this whole section the Olivet Discourse. Now, anybody know why it's called the Olivet Discourse?
It's on Mount Olive.
Because it's on the Mount of Olives. Exactly right. That's the only reason. When Jesus shares this information with his disciples, he is on the Mount of Olives. That's why it's called the Olivet Discourse. For us to really understand it, though, we need to understand what led up to it. And that's in Matthew chapter 23. So we're going to spend some time, and I want to just go ahead, take your Bible. I don't have it on the screen, so you're going to have your Bible out. Your translation might be a little bit different. If it is, then there's a troublesome phrase that may be different from what I'm reading, feel free to ask about it. But let's talk about this. What led up to the Olivet Discourse? Well, again, we've got to go back a little bit to chapter 22, where Jesus really begins to address and question the Pharisees. Right? And he asks them questions about himself, the Messiah. All right? And actually, back to verse 21 of chapter 22, it says, while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them, saying, what do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he? Well, they said, the son of David. He said to them, how then does David in the Spirit call him Lord, saying, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand, till I make your enemies your footstool. If David then calls him Lord, how is he his son? Good question. And no one was able to answer. They couldn't answer him a word. Nor from that day on did anyone dare question him anymore. Then in verse 23, chapter 23, it says, then, right, again.
What verse are you?
I'm in chapter 23, verse 1.
1, okay.
41.
Okay.
I think you said 20.
I started in 22, verse 41.
41.
I started in 22, verse 41. Sorry, did I not get that? Did I say 21? I was just testing to see if you were really listening. So, let me read it again then, since you got it. It's verse 41. 41 of chapter 22. All right. While the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them, saying, what do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he? They said to him, the son of David. He said to them, how then does David in the Spirit call him Lord, saying, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand, till I make your enemies your footstool. If David then calls him Lord, how is he his son? And again, what's interesting there is they couldn't answer him. And from that point forward, they wouldn't ask him any more questions because they were unable to answer him a word, nor from that day on did anyone dare question him anymore. So the Pharisees, now in chapter 23, verse 1, Jesus addresses the multitudes, and he's going to address them about the Pharisees. All right? Now, folks, there are folks out there that say Jesus never said anything bad about anybody. They didn't read Matthew 23. Okay? But remember, what Jesus says is true. It's true. All right? And so he wasn't being mean and nasty. He was telling the truth. He was calling a spade a spade. All right, so verse 1. Then Jesus spoke to the multitudes and to his disciples, saying, the scribes and Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. Therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, that observe and do. But do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. Now, folks, he's saying, don't do what they say, but don't do what they do. That's interesting. Do what they say, but don't do what they do.
That's
because
they don't practice what they
They don't practice what they preach. That's exactly right. All right? Verse 3, therefore, whatever they tell you, observe, that observe and do, but do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. For they bind heavy burdens hard to bear, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. But all their works they do to be seen by men. They make their phylacteries broad, and they enlarge the borders of their garments. So you know what the phylacteries are, right? What's the phylactery? That's that little box they tie on their forehead or on their forearm, all right? And they make theirs bigger so everybody can see it, okay? Now, and that's interesting in itself, all right? And they enlarge the borders of their garments. Now, what is that referring to?
The tassels.
The tassels on their prayer shawls, or the tassels that they would wear. The tzitzits is what those are called. If you've ever seen a Jewish person, a Jewish man, he wears a little, it's almost like a little apron, and on each four corners of this apron, he's got four tassels hanging down. Those are called tzitzits, all right? And the knots in that tzitzits, and those four tzitzits, represent the 613 laws of Moses. And that's what the colors and the knots represent, right? And so he said they make theirs bigger. And now why do they do that? Verse 6, they love the best places at the feast, and the best, verse 5 said, so that they will be seen by men. Verse 6, they love the best places at the feast, the best seats in the synagogue. They want to sit at the head table. Greetings in the marketplace. And they love to be called by men, Rabbi, Rabbi, or teacher, teacher. But you don't be called Rabbi. For one is your teacher. And that one is capitalized. Did you notice that? Who is their teacher? Jesus is, right. Holy Spirit is our teacher. The Christ. And you are all brethren. Do not call anyone on earth your father. Well, that kind of blows the Catholic Church out of the water, doesn't it? Okay? Do not call anyone on earth your father, for one is your Father who is in heaven. And do not be called teachers, for one is your teacher, the Christ. But he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. And whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For you neither go in yourselves, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayers. Therefore you will receive greater condemnation. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you travel land and sea to win one proselyte. A proselyte is a Gentile conversion to Judaism. Okay? You go from sea to sea, land, you travel land and sea to win one proselyte, and when he is won, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourselves. Folks, I don't see Jesus winning any popularity contest at this point. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever swears by the temple, it is nothing. Now, you might want to underline this at this point. You swear by the temple. Now, what was the temple? Well, of course, they had the temple. It was Herod's temple. And Jesus is probably in the temple confines when he's saying this. All right? Whoever swears by the temple, it is nothing, but whoever swears by the gold of the temple, he is obliged to perform it. Now, apparently they were allowed to make promises or oaths, and they would swear by the temple or by the gold of the temple. Well, if you swore by the gold of the temple, that really carried a lot of weight. If you just swore by the temple, that didn't mean just a whole lot. So the wealth of the temple is what they would swear by, all right? Fools and blind, for which is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold? And whoever swears by the altar, it is nothing, but whoever swears by the gift that is on it, he is obliged to perform it. Kind of the same concept. Fools and blind, for which is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifies the gift? Therefore, he who swears by the altar swears by it and by all things on it. He who swears by the temple swears by it and by him who dwells in it. And he who swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits on it. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! How many times has he said that? For you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone. Blind guides who strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees! What's the next word?
Hypocrites.
Hypocrites! For you cleanse the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside they are full of extortion and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first cleanse the inside of the cup and the dish, that the outside of them may be clean also. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like whitewashed, wow, this is tough. You're like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but inside are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. Now, folks, is Jesus getting pretty rough? Even so, you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! Because you build the tombs of the prophets and adorn the monuments of the righteous, and say, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. And in other words, what they're saying is, they said, if we would have lived in the days of the prophets, we wouldn't have led Israel in the way that they went. We wouldn't have partaken in the sin of the people at that point. Pardon? Mighty pompous. Yes, that's right. It says, therefore you are, verse 31, you are witnesses against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your father's guilt. Serpents, brood of vipers, how can you escape the condemnation of hell? Therefore indeed I send you prophets, wise men and scribes. Some of them will kill, and some of them you will kill and crucify, and some of them you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from city to city. You might want to circle that. That happened to the disciples. Who was the first to persecute the church? Saul. Well, Saul was the first. What group of people was the first?
Pharisees.
The Pharisees, the Jews. They were the first. And what did they? Well, they drug them in to the synagogues. They drugged them in. They stoned them. They executed them. Verse 35. That on you may all the righteous blood shed on the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Assuredly I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. See, your house is left to you desolate. For I say to you, you shall see me no more till you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And that's a reference to the Messianic kingdom. Now, folks, I know that's loaded with stuff that we would want to ask questions about. But I want us to refrain tonight because we want to move on into chapter 24. With that background, now listen to what's going on in chapter 24. Then, right? When? Well, right after he's talked to the Pharisees. Right after he said everything that he said in the temple and about their gifts and about their prayers and about everything that he said about them. Then Jesus went out from the temple and departed from the temple, and his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. Now, I can almost kind of see this in my mind, what's happening. The disciples had been there, and what have they heard? Well, they heard Jesus really castigating the Pharisees, and, I think they're kind of in some state of shock, and so as they come out, they start pointing out all the features of this beautiful temple. And they said, Lord, isn't this wonderful? He said something about the temple. He said several things about the temple, about the Pharisees. They were in charge of the temple. And look at this temple. Isn't this fantastic? Isn't this wonderful? All right. Let's read on. Verse 2. And Jesus said to them, do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another. This shall not be thrown down.
And that wasn't hyperbole.
And that wasn't hyperbole. That was going to happen, and it does happen. Exactly as Jesus declared in 70 A.D. Now, verse 3. Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? So, we got 3 questions that the disciples ask. Mark and Luke kind of narrow it down and say it was just really 4 disciples that asked these questions. And let's see, I'm trying to remember which 4 it was. It was Peter and Andrew, James and John, I believe. But Matthew just says the disciples asked these 3 questions. And what were these 3 questions? All right, question number 1. Tell us, when will these things happen? Well, what do you think they're referring to? The destruction of the temple. Yeah. Tell us when this is going to happen. All right. Then they ask a second question. What will be the sign of your coming? All right. Now, this one gets a little bit interesting for me because the disciples had a hard time understanding that Jesus was leaving. Right? The crucifixion hadn't happened yet. They didn't realize, they still weren't really aware of exactly what was going to happen within the next few days concerning the crucifixion. Yet somehow in all of this, and maybe it's just by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, they recognize that there is going to be a distinction between his presence with them now and a coming. What is going to be the sign of your coming? And we can almost insert here, of your second coming, was the question that they're asking. Yes?
And why would they ask that when they didn't totally understand who was going?
That's a good question. And the only thing the only real answer I can come up with is they apparently had some understanding, but I think this is more inspiration of the Holy Spirit. Because this is more for us than it was for them at that point. Okay? And then the third question, and thirdly, what is the sign of the end of the age? Now remember, for Jews there were only 2 ages. The one they were in right now and the one to come, which would have been the Messianic kingdom. Okay?
I like the NIV version because between each one it says and.
And.
So they didn't even understand. They thought when the temple was destroyed,
that's right,
that Christ was coming.
Exactly.
And that the end of the age was going to happen.
That's exactly right. And so now he's going to try to explain all this to them.
Good luck.
Yes.
Did they not maybe be thinking, when are you going to come into your kingdom? When are you going to establish who
Very
you are?
possibly. And that may be exactly what their understanding is at this point. Okay? Because and many of them are expecting Christ to come in and establish his kingdom. Mm-hmm. And so that may be exactly what they're asking here. But that's not the answer they're going to get. All right. And so we come to those 3 questions. Now, the problem is that Jesus does not answer those questions in the order in which they were asked. All right? Now, he answers all 3. Luke and Mark deal with question 1 and 2. Matthew is going to deal more with question number 3. Right? And so the order in which Jesus answers these 3 questions, he answers the third question first, the first question second, and the second question last. Right? And that's where folks get confused. And it's really easy to get confused. But so we've got to really watch the language as we read this to help us understand exactly what he is saying and exactly what he is answering at that particular point. All right, so let's go to Matthew 24, and let's read verses 1 through 9. And I'm going to probably have you just circle a few words here as we go, and then we will kind of see where we are, because just a little heads up at this point, where we are in the present church age is Matthew 24, basically verses 4 through 9. That's where we are. Okay? All right, so let's start with verse 1. Then Jesus went out, he departed. Verse 2, we got that already. Jesus said to them, "Do you not see all these things? And surely I say to you, not one stone will be left upon the temple." Go ahead and go to verse 4. And Jesus answered and said to them, "Take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." Period. All right? So, what has Jesus just described for us? He says, well, first of all, take heed, keep your eyes open, make sure that you don't allow anyone to deceive you. He says, "For many will come in my name." Many will come saying they are the Christ, and they will deceive many. Now, folks, there have been false Christs appear on the scene ever since Pentecost, pretty much. There have been literally hundreds. I think I counted a list that I pulled up on Google search. Boy, folks, those are wonderful. There's like 141 false Christs that have been recorded since the time of Christ up to today. And about 50 of those have been just the last century into this century. But now what's the point? There's been a bunch of people who come, that said they are Christ. They are Jesus. Can you think of any?
David Koresh.
David Koresh was one. Anybody else? Jim Jones. There was a big one over in Korea. Sun Myung Moon. They all three claim to be Christ. If we would have had time, I could have pulled up one currently that claims to be Christ. Folks, they're out there. There are a number who are claimed to be the returned Christ. What does Jesus say? Don't believe them. It's got to happen, but the end is not yet. Then he says, they will deceive many. And you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars. How many wars have there been since the time of Christ?
Too many to count.
Hundreds. Hundreds. War has been something that's been going on and on and on since the time of Christ, since before the time of Christ. We're a very warlike people.
All the way up to a couple minutes ago.
All the way up to a couple of minutes ago. That's exactly right. All right? Wars and rumors of war. See that you're not troubled. Why? For all these things must come to pass. So he says, look, there's going to be false Christ. There's going to be wars and rumors of wars. But don't be upset about that. That's got to happen. But that doesn't signify the end. The end is not yet, he says. Okay? So just pause there a moment. He says that those two signs, the false Christs and the wars and rumors of wars, are not the signs of the coming kingdom, are not the sign of the end of the age. He said those are happening, they're going to continue to happen, but that is not the end yet. All right? Now, what's the next word of the next verse? For. F-O-R. All right? The word for here, very important. Does anybody's translation omit the word for? What is your translation? Is that NIV, Steve?
Yes. It says, such things must happen, but the end is still to come.
Okay, then the next verse.
Nation will go.
Nation will rise against nation.
Okay, so just it omits the word for there. Okay? Anybody else have that similar translation where omits? Okay? Do me a favor, write that in. Put the word for in. In the Greek, it's there. It's there. And it's the word, let's see here. Let me make sure I got my words right here. It's the word gar, G-A-R.
What verse?
Verse 4. For kingdom will rise against kingdom. You might want to circle that word for.
Verse 7.
Verse 7. Verse 7. Oh, okay. 4. Verse 7. Okay.
Okay, verse 7. Y'all passing my test tonight real well. I'm proud of you. Verse 7. It says, for kingdom will rise against kingdom, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody got that? So the word for, it's called according to Strong's Concordance, it's a primary particle, properly assigning a reason, using an argument or an explanation or an intensification. It can be translated as and, as, because, but, even, for, indeed, no doubt, seeing, that sort of thing. So the word for here is really a very important word. All right? Because, he said, first of all, folks who are coming that are deceivers, wars and rumors of wars, that's going to happen, but that's not the end yet, because something's got to happen. Something else is going to happen. Now, many folks take the next phrase and just kind of say that's a continuation of the war theme. He's just kind of re-emphasizing the wars and rumors of wars. Okay? And Jews did that quite often in literature, especially in the Psalms. They would repeat a phrase or a concept in a different way and try to, in that way, emphasize that. The problem with taking that as an emphasis is that little word for, because that's an explanatory word. Jesus is explaining why that's not the sign of the end yet, because something else is going to happen. For kingdom will rise against kingdom. Now you might want to underline that. Kingdom will rise against kingdom. What would you take that to mean?
Countries against countries.
Country against country. Okay? All right?
What's happening right now?
What's happening right now? All right? Arnold Fruchtenbaum, who is a Messianic Jew, Dr. Arnold Fruchtenbaum, Messianic Jew, graduate of Dallas Theological Seminary, and he's not alone in this, many, many others, are offering an explanation for this that I think carries weight. Now, again, anything we have something like this, there's always be disagreement, okay? But I think he's got this carries weight for several reasons. And I think I'll explain what those are as we go. He says that this phrase, kingdom will rise against kingdom, is what's called a Jewish idiom. What's an idiom? Pardon? You've been called an idiom? Okay. I think you've confused an M with a T, but that's right. Sue?
It's like a saying. I think it's a saying.
It's a saying. It's a concept. All right? And Fruchtenbaum gives several illustrations of this. He says, and it talks directly about the scope of the territory in which he is speaking. And so Jesus at this point is speaking about not just Israel, but he's speaking about the entire world. And so what they say, and I really do follow along with this concept, is that kingdom against kingdom concept is really not referring to just your normal war and rumor of war that we see previously. It's not these skirmishes here and there. It's not even a war like we're seeing in Israel right now. But it would be a war that would involve all countries. A world war. Now, has there been a point in history where we've had a world war? 2 of them. Within, 20 years?
Yes.
Okay. So World War I and World War II are the only world wars we've had. We're coming close to World War III, and many think that's going to be Armageddon anyway, okay? But let's don't reach up there yet. That's future. Let's talk about this kingdom against kingdom, World War I and II. What did World War I and II, what was it a catalyst for? Because of World War I and II, what happened that changed the world?
Became more one world.
It became more one world. Okay, so we have a one world concept now. And by the way, if you look at World War II, the history of World War II, there was only one or two countries in the world that were not touched in some way by World War I and II. Okay?
Well, something to remember, at the end of World War I, we had the development of the League of Nations.
Yes.
Which failed.
Yes.
And then at the end of World War II, we have the United Nations, which
Yes.
failed but is still in existence.
So again, we've got this leading into this one world concept because of World War I and II. What else happened as a result of World War I and II?
Israel became a nation.
Do what?
Israel became a nation.
Israel became a nation. Right? I mean, you read Exodus. That was all about the Jews around, especially European Jews, who have fled and have come to Israel. And in 1948, Jeremiah's prophecy that in one day the nation would be reestablished. And that's exactly what happened in 1948, May 14th, 1948.
That was not during the war,
No, but after.
in the war.
At the end of the war.
But the war was the catalyst
It was the catalyst
for everything else.
that stirred everything up.
Well, World War II, the basis of the Germans' attack was to eradicate the Jewish nation.
That's right.
And by doing that, all the Jewish people that were not killed in concentration camps, that no country wanted them, so the British, who were
Right.
basically the one of the most powerful countries at the time, we have this piece of Indian reservation that nobody wants. That
Yeah.
we're going to stick them on a reservation.
Right. Exactly. But as the catalyst of World War I and II, the Jewish nation was rebirthed. And what's happened since 1948?
Grown. They've come in from all over the world.
They're coming from all over the world. The Aliyah flights are still happening. Jews go, and the nation of Israel, if you are Jewish and you want to live in Israel, they will pay your plane fare. They will set you up in a kibbutz. They will get you a job.
Yes.
And they will make sure that you're taken care of for the first year. After that year, if you want to return from whence you came, you can, but at your own expense. Or you can stay, since you've had a job, you have a place to live, you are now a Jewish citizen. And a Jewish nation will pay for that, okay? And there are millions now, Jews, that are living in Israel. Daryl?
It's one of the richest nations in the world.
It is now one of the richest nations in the world. It is one of the most productive nations in the world. In fact, Europe gets most of all their produce from Israel at this point. They have found huge oil reserves under the land in Israel that they are now pumping out oil to the world. They have led in the desalination process of the Mediterranean Sea for fresh water, and they pipe that water into the deserts, and the deserts are now literally blooming. I've seen it. It's just really amazing what's taking place in the deserts. Chip?
There's a lot of information about the Dead Sea becoming fresh water.
Yes, there is. And that's potentially happening as well. And so what do we see? Since World War I, World War II, we've seen the birth of a nation. We've seen Israel reborn. And all of this we know to be signs of what?
Coming of Christ.
What?
The coming of Christ.
The coming of Christ. So, where are we? Well, we're in Matthew 24, verses 4 through 8. World War I and World War II were the catalyst. So where are we, folks?
Right of that. Just before.
We're right of that, and so we're getting awfully close to the rapture.
We're at the jumping off point.
And what Jesus said was, where we are the birth pangs. Now, let's read some more of that verse, of these
If I'm
verses.
not raptured, when the chart says, I'm going to be a mid-tribulationalist. And then if that doesn't work, I'm going to be an in-tribulationalist.
I don't think you're going to have to worry about either one. All right?
Gary,
All right. Yes.
question.
Uh-huh.
In order to go to Israel,
Uh-huh.
you have to prove you're Jewish,
That's correct.
which is an interesting thing.
Uh-huh.
Because until very recently,
Uh-huh. Right.
you couldn't prove that without Ancestry.com.
Yes.
And I'll share with you something that we have just found out,
Mm-hmm.
that Bob was probably 50% Jewish, and my children are almost 1/4% Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that not the wildest thing in the
That
world?
is wild. Yeah. And
So cool.
yeah. And it's what's really interesting is that in the last few years, they've changed how you determine your Jewishness. Used to, they said it was based upon your mother. If your mother was Jewish, then you were Jewish. They have recently changed that within just the last few years to say if your father was Jewish, then you would qualify as well. So most likely, in that 25%, they would qualify, which is interesting, and that is fascinating.
Didn't you have to go to a rabbi or something, and you had to get paperwork through him?
Oh yeah, you'd have to do those type of things. You'd have to contact the Jewish nation, maybe go through a rabbi, contact the consulate. But yeah, you'd have to go through all of that. You'd have to prove your Jewishness before you would qualify. But once you proved it, you could
Which
go.
they couldn't do.
Which they couldn't do.
Not very, since 1948, in order for it to grow,
That's right.
you had to be able to prove, and these tests coming along,
That's right.
it's just incredible.
It is totally incredible. Daryl?
That is to live and be a resident, permanent resident.
That's correct.
But you can still visit all you need to.
You can visit all you want. That's right. And if you're Jewish, you get preferential treatment.
Now, they want your money.
They want your money, and they want Gentile tourists in there because that's a very big industry. But right now, the tourism is not wonderful because of everything that's been going on. Yes.
The difference there is that you pay as a tourist. If you're Jewish, they'll pay you.
There you go, and that is the big deal. Yes.
There can be some real confusion
Mm-hmm.
if you're a president, a king, or whatever of another country.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Bible clearly says you support Israel,
That's right.
they support you.
Uh-huh.
But if Israel oversteps and they're doing things against mankind, so to speak,
Right.
you're in a swivet there. You know, what do you do?
That's
Because
right.
the Bible says support Israel, but you maybe don't think they should be bombing everybody.
Right.
And it's
Well, and again, here's where it's really important to make sure you get your news from the right sources. Because I promise you, the American media they are going to portray Israel as the aggressor instead of the defender.
well, I remember them taking all the Jewish people. That's what started this.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Susan?
The way I look at that is if the Bible tells me to do something,
Yeah.
then, and they do something wrong with it, that's on them.
Mm-hmm.
I still need to do what.
There you go.
the Bible tells me to do.
And I think that's probably a good way to look at that.
God
All right.
says, vengeance is mine.
All right, let's go ahead and continue because we're not quite through with this yet. Notice he said that this is the beginning of sorrows. Well, what is the beginning of sorrows? Well, let's look at it again. Verse 7, nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. I'm convinced that's World War I and II. And there's some additions there. Not only will that happen, and there will be famines and pestilences. Now, I'm adding the word and, but that's what that comma means, right? Okay. There will be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in various places.
They are happening right now.
Folks, I tell you what, over the last 4 weeks, Anita almost every single day has gotten a report on Facebook of an earthquake somewhere. And close. The New Madrid Fault is active. The San Andreas Fault is active. They're having earthquakes in places that never had earthquakes before. So that is definitely on the rise. How about famines? According to the World Health Organization, WHO, we are less than 50 years away from worldwide famine. And you know, folks, we got it made in the U.S., but what would it take to wipe that out?
Not much.
Electricity go off. Susan?
Disruption of the transportation system.
Transportation. Susan?
Buying up all the land.
Bill Gates buying up all the land.
Weather.
And or China. Yeah.
Weather.
Yeah.
What?
Weather.
Weather. Most of us don't remember the Dust Bowl of the Great Depression era, but
There's a drought right now.
and we are beginning another drought, and that's happening more and more. But how about pestilences? Anybody heard of something called COVID-19?
What?
Never heard of that one, had you?
I had about 10 ticks on me this week, and I couldn't believe it. They were so small, they were littler than the end.
Yeah, little seed ticks, and oh, I hate those things. Yeah. But, you know, folks, there are diseases rising up that we've never heard of. I mean, how many have heard of alpha-gal?
Oh, yeah.
How many of you knew about alpha-gal 5 years ago? A few, all right? You know, my son's got alpha-gal. I know April has alpha-gal.
Gluten allergies.
Gluten allergies. Susan?
Only because of nursing school.
Only because of nursing school. That's right. But folks, you know, where are we? What have we seen since World War II? Have we seen an escalation of earthquakes? Have we seen an escalation of famine? Have we seen an escalation of pestilence? It seems like it's getting more and more. And Jesus said this is the beginning of sorrows. This is the birth pangs. I think some translations translated. Now, I've never been pregnant. You'd be glad to know. But I've been told by those who were that you carry your child for 9 months, and according toward the end of that 9-month period, something begins to happen. What happens? Pain. At first, it's a twinge, right? You do what?
He didn't have it either.
You didn't have it either? That's
I
right.
had hot flashes.
I can relate to that one.
Hey, if it was up to men to have babies, we'd be extinct.
Yes, we would. It'd kill us for sure. But it starts out kind of slow, doesn't it? Right? But then as the time gets closer, what happens?
Increases frequency.
The frequency increases and the intensity gets worse until
Out it comes.
out they come. Now apply that concept to what Jesus has said. He said, this is the beginning of sorrow. This is the birth pangs. And the birth pangs started out kind of slow, but they're getting more and more intense. And what's going to happen when the birth pangs end? The rapture.
There'll be people left on the earth that wish they'd gone to a business meeting so they know how to run the church.
That's true. That's true. Barb?
I never heard on the news, but I've got a lot of friends in Guatemala. Guatemala in 1 month has had over 1,000 earthquakes.
That's okay. And just in Guatemala. That's right. And folks, I mean, this is, I think I read one statistic not too long ago that there have been over 4,000 earthquakes across the globe in one day, which kind of set a record for the number of earthquakes. Pat?
Some people that I've spoken with think that the reason we know about all of that is just because communication is better, equipment that records all that is better, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have a good response to that idea?
You know, that may be a reason because we can measure them better now.
Some of it,
Yeah.
at least.
But I think we can see
Not
just
the whole
from the damage that has happened we're seeing more and more earthquake type of damage, and that would have been recorded in history.
Yeah.
Those
Well,
types
there's
of damage.
also bigger cities, there's more people.
Exactly.
Et cetera.
Right,
But
so-
I firmly believe there's.
But again, that awareness is there because we do have the mass communication means
Yes.
now that we once did not have. Now, what's the whole point, folks? Well, we talk about wars and rumors of wars. We talk about the Antichrist. Jesus said that's going to happen. That's going to be part of it. And it's still happening, by the way. But that's not the sign of the end. What is the sign of the end? Kingdom will rise against kingdom, nation against nation. There will be famines, there will be earthquakes, there will be pestilence. These are the beginning of sorrows. So where are we? Well, folks, I tried to nudge that birth pangs up closer to the red arrow going up because I think we can see from the escalation of what's happening, we're getting closer and closer. Plus, add to that, as Steve mentioned a moment ago, or at the beginning, the fact that we are there's no prophecy left that needs to be fulfilled concerning the rapture of the church. They could happen
Tonight.
before I get out my next sentence. Truly, it could happen that quickly. The time is here. The time is right. And Jesus said, this is the sign of his coming. All right, let's read a little bit more. All right, beginning in verse. All right, so you see where we are, right? Matthew 24, 4 through 8. That's where we are. Right. Now, verses 9 through 14. Let's start with verse 9. Then, circle the word then. What's the word then mean?
After that, something's going to
After that happens. All right? So we've got a timestamp here. When will this next? It's going to be after those other things. In other words, after the rapture. All right? Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you. And he's talking to the Jews, not just the disciples that are sitting there. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation. Remember, folks, the thing where people struggle with concerning the rapture is they fail to realize what the purpose of the tribulation is and who the major players are going to be of the rapture. The church is not there. Now, I'll just challenge you. Read Revelation, read all the parts about the tribulation, and find a reference to the church there.
Not only the church is not there,
Uh-huh.
but the Holy Spirit is taken away. That's how all this evil is able to get us.
The restrainer has been taken away. And we'll talk more about that when we get into the book of Revelation.
You
But-
said before that after we're gone, this is, tribulation is there to punish. God's punishing his children.
God's poured out his wrath. That's exactly right.
The Israelis.
And so Israel at this point is the focal point. Because it's through all of this that Israel will finally wake up and come to realize that Jesus truly was the Messiah that they rejected, but they will now accept him. And as it says in Jeremiah the prophet, and as he says here, as he said in the last part of verse 23, chapter 23, that you will call upon and you'll ask me to come at that point. Because you recognize that I was the Messiah, or I am the Messiah.
Non-Christian Gentiles will be caught up in that too.
No, yes, they will. All right, and of course there will be non-Christian Gentiles during the tribulation as well. Okay, so but the focus is on the Jew during the tribulation. The church is gone, and that would mean believing Jews as well. Okay, the church is made up of Jews who believe and Gentiles who believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, who died on the cross, who was buried, who rose from the dead, and is in heaven now preparing a place for us. All right? That makes sense?
During the tribulation, right?
Pardon me?
They would come to realize during the tribulation, all these things. that
Yes.
are happening.
Yes. Yes. The Jews and some Gentiles will come to realize all these things that are happening are God's wrath being poured out, and they will recognize that Jesus is the Messiah. All right, let's go ahead and read a little bit more here. It says, then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Then many will be offended and will betray one another and will hate one another. In other words, they'll turn on one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. So there are going to be more false prophets who rise up during the tribulation. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end, meaning the end of the tribulation, shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom, now this verse has been taken out of context. It says, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come.
144,000.
There will be 144,000 witnesses that we'll discover in Revelation who will be proclaiming and preaching, be the two witnesses. But it says the entire world, the gospel will reach the entire world. When's that going to happen? Not before the rapture, but after the rapture. Okay? So the gospel going to the world does not have to happen for the rapture to happen. That happens after the rapture.
And when it says, he who will endure to the end shall be saved, is that specifically talking about Jews?
The tribulation? Yes. Well, the tribulation, it would be Jew or Gentile who was saved.
But does that automatically make them born again?
Well, the whole idea of enduring to the end was that they were born again. They believed Messiah.
A lot of people will be saved during the tribulation.
Yes, they will.
Correct.
Right. You know, and we do know that during the last half, there'll be a great exodus to Petra, where Jew and Gentile believers will be safe. As well, I think there's some other parts of the world that's going to happen as well. But again, there are Jew and Gentile believers who will, men and women who will be saved, but they are enduring to the end. And it doesn't necessarily mean salvation in the sense of spiritual salvation. It means they're going to make it through the tribulation. Okay? Just remember something, folks. Just because the word saved is used, that doesn't always mean spiritual salvation. It can be physical as well. I think that's what it's referring to here. Steve?
Gary, my verse 10 says, at that time many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other.
That's right.
And that turning away from the faith kind of goes back to where it says, don't let people deceive you.
That's right.
Because there'll be people that come and can do wonderful miracles.
That's right. And we are, of course, we're out of time. You know that. And so let me go ahead and go to the next slide. So Matthew, what we have just seen in Matthew 24, 9 through 14, is the first half of the tribulation. Okay? That's the first half. All right? The second half of the tribulation, Matthew 24, 15, and through the rest of the chapter, or the rest of the next few verses, talks about the abomination of desolation that was spoken of in the prophet Daniel. That's the halfway point of the tribulation. From that point forward, it's called the Great Tribulation. And the persecution is so bad that the world had never seen anything like it before. There will be many who will come in the name of Christ saying, and Jesus says, do not believe them. He says they could be so convincing that they could deceive the very elect at that point. But he says, don't believe them. And here's why you don't believe them. He says, because, now, and folks, I'm going to throw this out and we're going to deal with it next week, okay? When Jesus comes at the end of the tribulation, how does he come?
In the clouds and back to
We're coming with
the
him.
Mount of Olives. We're coming with him all the
Okay,
things
he's going to come riding on a horse. The armies of heaven are going to be behind him. We're going to see the back of his head because he's out front. Okay? He's coming to earth. And he says, as you see, as lightning is seen from the east to the west. It's a very public thing. And he says it this way. Now, unless you read it, then we'll talk about it more next week. He says, know this. When you see the abomination of desolation, the end is near.
run.
Run. And exactly, he says, unless the days were shortened, nobody would survive. And what is the shortening? It's the end of the tribulation. And so we can mark it down, folks. 3.5 years from the abomination of desolation, the second coming happens to the day.
And the good thing is we won't be here for the abomination of desolation.
That's exactly right. And we won't be here. Now, what's the difference between the second coming and the rapture?
The rapture happens quickly, in the twinkling
Quickly,
of an eye.
twinkling of an eye.
Nobody's going to know what happened.
Nobody's going to know what happened. We'll only hear the trumpet, and we are caught up to meet him. As the second coming, we're coming with him. So I think it's a mere sarfati that says it this way. You can tell the difference between the rapture by how you see Jesus. If you see his face, that's the rapture. If you see the back of his head, that's the second coming.
Well, I'm looking forward to the rapture.
I'm looking forward to seeing his face. That's it. Okay? Now, is this making sense to you folks? Now, do you understand what I'm talking about on World War I, World War II, and how Jesus is saying, we've got a sign here. Now, one of the next things he's going to say in a parable of the fig tree. He says, when you see the fig tree blooming, what do you know?
It's about to be spring and
It's about to be spring and summer's coming. Now, there's nothing really significant about the fig tree in that parable. Yeah. What he's saying is, just like you know that when the fig tree blooms, spring is here and summer's coming, when you see these signs happen.
So he's using it as a metaphor.
Yeah. When you see these signs happen, you know spring, the summer is coming. Jesus, folks, I don't know how to say it any other way. Jesus is coming.
How can people, educated people, Bible students, studies, gone to churches, been like you, gone through seminary and everything, how can they possibly believe and not believe in pre-tribulation rapture?
I've asked myself that question a lot. It all does depend upon exactly how you want to take the Scripture.
We got friends that don't believe in
Yeah.
the rapture, they believe in the afters, the way they're taught.
Right.
The way their pastor is teaching them.
That's very true. And that has to do with how we decide we want to interpret Scripture. And typically, the literalist view believes in a pre-tribulation rapture. Now, I don't see that we can take it any other way. Because you have to spiritualize so much in order to wipe out that teaching of the rapture.
I'm different than
Yeah, I know.
everybody else, I guess. But it is difficult for me when someone's teaching not that.
Right.
Like a Calvinist.
Yes.
That bothers me because they're teaching to people that may accept that as the truth. And I think it's my job to say, no, that's wrong.
You're not going to be a very popular person, Steve, but I don't disagree with you.
And I wasn't when I did that.
Yeah. But I don't disagree with you. I agree. We've got, especially in these day and times, folks, we've got to begin to stand up a little more for the truth. We really do. Susan? Susan had her hand up for a while. Hang on. Susan?
Well, I know that my son has been going to a Baptist church, staunch Baptist actually, for about 10 years. He and his wife, they do not believe in the rapture.
Right.
And they we weren't taught that in a Baptist church. That's it. But they're saved. They're going to heaven. So that point doesn't matter as far as salvation.
Yes. Belief in the rapture is not a salvation issue.
But they say, what I've heard, the word tribulation isn't in the Bible. So that's
There's a lot of words in the Bible that we don't,
right.
or that are not in the Bible.
That's where they're coming from.
Yeah.
But they love Jesus. They're
Yeah.
solid with that.
Right.
So
Right. Again, it's coming from, and what happens is they spiritualize passages like we've just read. And they try to make all this spiritual. And that basically is an all-millennial viewpoint. When we explain away the second, basically what they're saying is that things are just going to keep going like they are. There's not going to be any changes. And sooner or later, it's just all going to be good. We'll bring ourselves into a world of utopia because we're just going to get better and better and better.
And the same thing when they're saying it's the church at the end time that's getting all the blessings.
Yeah. No, that's right.
That's not what it says.
They're not reading the Scriptures. They're not reading Scriptures. All right, folks, I'm over 10 minutes, and so we've got to quit. Thank you so much. I